The mighty USS Phelps, a Porter-class destroyer with a displacement of 1,805 tons. She spanned over 360 feet in length and reached speeds of up to 43 miles per hour. The Phelps was named after Admiral Stonewall Phelps from Buckfield, Maine. Admiral Phelps fought in Seattle, Washington in the Indian Wars. The Phelps was secretly commissioned on February 26, 1936. This is because America was completely uninvolved in the rising tensions in Europe at the time. Photographs of the commissioning were forbidden. The USS Phelps operated under Commander A. H. Rooks from February 26, 1936 till December 6, 1941. The Phelps' days were mostly consumed by training exercises and other forms of military preparation. On December 7, 1941, the USS Phelps was stationed at Pearl Harbor along with a number of other destroyers. On this day, the Japanese surprise attacked Pearl Harbor by air. Within minutes of the attack, the Phelps was firing back at the Japanese planes. However, the small caliber mounts were restricted from firing because of their proximity to the other ships. The Phelps was untouched by enemy fire during the attack. The Phelps is credited with taking out one Japanese plane. However, it is likely that she inflicted damage and assisted in taking out more than that. For the next week or so after the attack, the Phelps maneuvered around the harbor, searching for any possible enemy threats. The men aboard the Phelps acted with remarkable composure under fire, and everything the crew could have done to maximize efficiency was accomplished diligently. In February 1942, the USS Phelps was tasked to assist in the Salamaua raid. On Friday the 20th of February, the USS Phelps received a report of enemy planes in their vicinity. She contributed to damage done to many Japanese planes and ships throughout multiple conflicts in the ensuing days. Up until March 10th, the Phelps assisted in actions in Bougainville and Salamaua. The Phelps returned to a friendly dry dock. In April of 1942, many new men reported for duty. Many alterations were made to the ship, preparing her for war. In May of 1942, the Phelps was assisting in naval action in the Coral Sea. On Sunday, May 3rd, the USS Phelps made up an attack group of 2 cruisers and 3 destroyers. On May 5th, enemy ships at Tulagi were repeatedly attacked. 2 enemy destroyers, 4 attack transports, and 1 AM were sunk early that morning. 5 Japanese planes were destroyed as well. Other enemy forces were damaged. The following day, it was confirmed that there were heavy Japanese naval forces in the area. Then, radar picked up on an unidentified flying object. The Phelps opened fire and assisted in the takedown of what turned out to be an enemy plane. The next morning, a major attack was launched by the Japanese. 2 U.S. ships were completely destroyed. The Phelps was not in the vicinity of this attack. The Phelps did not avoid conflict on the 7th and 8th. Japanese planes surrounded the Phelps and nearby ships. The Phelps constantly fired at Japanese planes. She came close to being hit by a torpedo, coming close enough to feel its wake. The USS Lexington and the USS Yorktown both suffered damage during the conflict. The Yorktown survived 3 torpedo strikes. The Lexington was not as lucky and was completely immobilized. To prevent capture by the Japanese, the Phelps administered a coup de grace and finished her off with 2 torpedoes. Rescue operations began, and the Phelps assisted in the rescue of Lexington's crew. All the Lexington survivors had with them was what they wore. The Phelps crew outfitted them as best they could. In June of 1942, the Phelps was at the Battle of Midway. On June 4th, an enemy force was sighted. It consisted of 4 carriers, 2 battleships, 4 heavy cruisers, and 6 destroyers. The Phelps picked up many unidentified objects on its radar that night, but lost contact to them all. The Phelps mostly assisted friendly ships during the battle. On Saturday the 6th, the enemy had been driven into retreat. Task Force 17 had valiantly defeated the Japanese, but not without heavy losses. In August of 1942, the Phelps screened friendly ships at Guadalcanal while fighter groups took off and landed. The Japanese caused no serious damage to U.S. forces, and 30 to 40 enemy planes were destroyed. Later that month, in the Eastern Solomons, the Phelps witnessed a 1,000-pound bomb hit a battleship. The USS Enterprise was struck multiple times, causing many casualties. She then received orders to return to Pearl Harbor for repairs. The Phelps returned to the mainland United States after resupplying at Tongatabu Harbor on September 6th. The USS Phelps' next major operation was in the Aleutian Islands, former U.S. soil that was taken by the Japanese. The goal was to get it back. My great-grandfather, Robert Kelly, boarded the USS Phelps for the first time on April 7th of 1943. The Phelps received orders to get underway for Adak, Alaska. They arrived at Cold Bay on April 30th. About 18 ships came in after the Phelps. The plan was to have Kiska and Attu under constant aerial fire to soften them up before the invasion. My grandfather recorded the situation in his journal.
The Phelps was slated to participate in the attack, right up front.
The weather around the Aleutians was miserable. Robert Kelly described it.
There's very heavy fog, and most you can see is 500 yards.
The Phelps shelled the beach without Japanese resistance. On the 12th, the battleships began to bombard the island. The Phelps opened fire at 1507 hours. A friendly P-38 crashed astern the Phelps. Robert Kelly wrote,
One P-38 got his port engine shot out and crashed in the water. We picked up the pilot and he is okay.
On the 13th, he wrote,
The Japs tried to shell our boats, so we opened fire on the Japs.
The Phelps got a contact that turned out to be a submarine at 1425 hours and dropped 3 charges on it. Later that day, the same sub was spotted and sunk. The conditions aboard the Phelps were undesirable, to say the least. My grandfather wrote on the 13th,
The skipper won't let us take our clothes off. We have had them on for 4 days now. We've had about 4 hours of sleep since 2330 on May 10th and got that 15 to 20 minutes at a time.
On May 14th, Holt's Bay was bombarded by American fire from ships near the Phelps. The Army had 11,000 troops on the ground at Attu. That evening, Robert Kelly wrote,
They let us take a shower tonight. The first in 4 days. It sure felt good.
The Phelps then expanded 649 rounds shelling Holt's Bay. On the 15th and 16th, she got some ammo and fuel from nearby friendly ships and patrolled the area around Attu. On May 17th, the Phelps continued targeting Holt's Bay. My grandfather wrote,
We shelled the east arm of Holt's Bay. We destroyed our targets, which were a few houses and some foxholes. We fired rapid fire. Boy, is that fun. Expanded 403 rounds. Secured from GQ at 1135. The Jillian had about 50 wounded soldiers on her, all of them between the ages of 19 and 24. That sure makes your blood boil.
On May 26th, the Phelps got underway from Adak to Attu. There she patrolled the Sarandon Bay area. Orders were then given to bombard the Chichagof harbor, where enemy installations were set up. Tasks continued until June 1st, when the Phelps received notice that American naval presence was no longer needed in the area. On November 19th, 1943, the men of the USS Phelps prepared themselves for war.
Tomorrow we go into battle.
My grandfather wrote,
The weather is perfect. Today we went to GQ twice for air contacts. They were friendly. Damn it. We are going to take Macon Island from the Japs. They say there are about 1,000 of them there. That's tough on their part.
On November 20th, 1943, the USS Phelps got underway for the Gilbert Islands. As planes bombed the Japanese on Macon Island, the Phelps left off Red Beach and commenced firing 5 minutes after arrival. Many fires were observed on the beach. Robert Kelly summarized the day.
Well, everything went according to schedule. The attack started in early morning. We went to GQ at about 04:50 for a surface contact. Thought we were going to get a little action, but it turned out to be our own force. Just before sunrise, the plane went in. There were torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and fighters. The bombers just bombed the hell out of the place for a couple hours. The fighters strafed the beach and put out the fire. Sure would hate to be the Jap on that island. The battle wagon and cruisers opened up at their main batteries and just shelled the holy hell out of it. They shelled for about 3 steady hours. I don't see how such a small island stayed afloat. We started for Yellow Beach to do some shooting ourselves. Our target was Wo Chong's Wharf, and we opened up and completely destroyed it.
On November 22nd, the Phelps was to stay in the lagoon and be ready to provide fire support if needed. Tanks proceeded inward from the beaches. The Phelps was kept waiting and watching as the island was being invaded. My grandfather wrote,
While looking through the rangefinder at everything in general, we saw a war being fought by the soldiers. They're brave lads. Also, we saw some natives, and the girl didn't have anything but a grass skirt on. Pretty nice.
On November 23rd, the Phelps was moved for anti-submarine duty. The following day, Robert Kelly commented on the living condition in the Phelps.
This is getting to be hell. There isn't any water for showers, and the drinking water is salty, and the chow is brutal.
However, the next day was Thanksgiving, and he wrote in a more positive light.
Nothing of interest today, except they did give us a fair chow. A couple of Jap planes came around and dropped flares, lit the place up like a Christmas tree. We expect to see some more bandits tomorrow. Hope so.
The next day, my grandfather's wish came true.
Sure enough, they came again, just about 10 to 20 minutes after sunset. They dropped flares, but there was no shooting.
On Saturday, November 27th, the Phelps fueled up, and a few days later, on the 30th, she headed home to Pearl Harbor. On January 12, 1944, the Phelps received orders to get underway for Pearl Harbor. My great-grandfather documented the ensuing days.
Well, it looks like we're going down to take the Marshall Islands. Left the States January 13th, 1944, heading for Pearl Harbor. We had about 40 ships with us, all of all types, and about 40,000 Marines. Some was going to catch hell. We left some of the ships out, and we and a few others cans pulled into Pearl Harbor on the 21st of January. Took on stores, fuel, ammunition, and got underway at 0800 in the morning of the 22nd.
The Phelps arrived at Enubing and Melu Islands. Her job was to provide fire support. Bombardment of the island began at dawn. Robert Kelly wrote,
On January 31st, Dog Day, we started in. Opened fire on the beach at 0645. Knocked out a few radio towers and a few other objectives. Fighter planes strafed the beach and set off a fuel dump and also an ammo dump. We saw some Japs get in a small boat. Took good care of them. The rats. Earlier in the day, 3 planes collided in midair. Some of the men bailed out and were killed.
The Phelps neutralized Enubing Island, as well as making solid hits on Japanese batteries on Roy Island. American troops had secured themselves on the islands. The ships continued fire all night, so as to keep the enemy awake. Plans were then made for the main attack on Roy and Namur Islands. The next day, the Phelps assisted in firing on Namur and Roy. A Japanese counterattack was broken up and the area was secured. The Phelps went back to Kwajalein Island on February 5th. On February 17, 1944, the Phelps approached the Nawatope Atoll. Robert Kelly wrote,
Well, here it is, the 17th, Dog Day, and the weather is perfect for the operation. We started in a lagoon and we saw a grounded ship with a 3-inch gun on it. It opened up on one of our mine sweeps, so we fired on it and knocked it all to hell. We also saw a pillbox and fired on it. Knocked it out too. The mine sweep was located in 19 mines which were right around us. Lucky us.
The atoll was deemed secure later that day. A few days later, he recounted the occupation.
I'd say at 0845, the troops were supposed to hit the beach, and they hit it 0844, 1 minute early. Perfect time. We went out to meet the garrison troops on the 19th and returned on the 20th. And on the 21st, we bombarded Nawatope. The beach was spotted for us. We ceased fire and the tanks started moving in. The beach spotter asked permission to hold up the tanks and let us shoot some more. The fire was cleaning out wild platforms. On February 22nd, we flew from a merchant ship and anchored off the beach.
The Phelps went to be repaired. This took a couple of weeks, and by the time she was battle ready again, a new operation was being planned. The Phelps took part in the Marianas operation from June 14th to June 22nd, 1944. On June 14th, the island of Saipan could be seen from the Phelps as she approached the Mariana Islands. Flashes were observed from aboard the Phelps. On the 16th, the Phelps came across one Japanese soldier swimming in the ocean without a life jacket. The Phelps picked up what turned out to be a lone survivor and transferred him to another ship. On the 17th, the Phelps opened fire and took out 3 enemy gun emplacements. On June 18th, the Phelps was all of a sudden under fire by a Japanese shore battery. She took 2 direct hits, which wounded 16 men and caused scattered fires across the ship. The number 2 fire room was knocked out by the fire, filling the room with smoke and shrapnel. The men aboard the Phelps secured the room before it could get worse, which made it possible for her to continue her assignment. The Phelps went to a transport area to get repairs. The manner and composure by which the Phelps continued fire while on fire was a commendable example of why the Phelps had such an enviable reputation. On June 21st, the Phelps opened fire on a small enemy craft. Direct hits were made, taking the craft out. The next day, the Phelps was ordered to escort a group of transports back to Pearl Harbor. The Marianas operation was the last significant military operation in which the USS Phelps took part. On November 6, 1945, the valiant USS Phelps was decommissioned. She was officially sold and scrapped on August 10, 1947. As for my great-grandfather, Robert Kelly came home and started a family. He settled in Buffalo, New York. He was only once heard about talking about the war. A brief moment which quickly ended in tears. My family knew little about his war experience until after he passed away on October 2nd, 2001. That was when his journal was discovered and given to my father. All that remains of the USS Phelps today are the memories and the remaining proud crew members that were willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for our country.